Hey, hello, and welcome. I am Debbie Peterson of Getting to Clarity and the creator of the Way Forward in Your Career Mastery Program. So today I have with me Darcy Luoma. Did I say it correctly?
Yes.
All right, perfect. And Darcy is a certified coach. She is a dynamic facilitator and professional speaker. She has her master's in organizational development from Pepperdine University and is the CEO of Darcy Luoma Coaching and Consulting, which has worked with hundreds of organizations to create high-performing people and team. So Darcy balances her thriving business with raising her two energetic daughters. Darcy, how old are the daughters?
12 and 14.
Okay, I have been there and I totally get the energetic part.
Yes.
Oh, and in addition to that, she competes in triathlon. So, I bow to you. Now, it's interesting. We're going to be talking about core confidence today, and more specifically, Darcy's system about how to build core confidence. But Darcy has a story behind how she came to be, and I'm going to let her share that and then get into what you need to know so that you can build core confidence in your career going forward. So, Darcy, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thanks, Debbie. It's such an honor to be here. I love the mission that you have in helping women and emerging leaders. I have been focused on creating high-performing people and teams since I left my full-time position. I was working for a U.S. Senator for 12 years as the director of his office, and he retired, and that was my opportunity to figure out what was next. And so I hired a coach, and she asked me a question that nobody else asked me in my life. And I thought this was an interesting part of the story, Debbie, given that you help women break through to be more successful in their careers. Everybody else was assuming I'd stay in the political sector and campaigns. And my coach said, if in 10 years you looked back and you had no regrets, what would you do? Ooh. And I was like, yeah, right?
Great question.
And I had an immediate answer. I said, I'd launch my own business doing coaching and consulting and speaking. And she said, great, go for it. And I said, I can't do that. I'm the sole breadwinner for a family of 4. Are you kidding? I need health insurance and I need benefits and a salary. And she helped me work through all of those. Some of them were real fears. Some of them were those, gremlins, saboteurs in my head getting in the way. And so my last day with the U.S. Senate was January 2nd, 2013. And my first day with my own business was January 3rd. And I launched from there. I have never looked back. Let's see, what is that? Maybe 8 years now. I have no regrets.
Oh, terrific. That's amazing. And good for you for doing that. To see it is one thing. To take action on it is so totally another.
Yes, especially if I didn't have my coach as an advocate helping me figure out how to have the confidence to move forward, I am quite certain I would not have been able to make that jump.
And it's interesting because it all started with a question. Yes. And the answers to the questions are your answers on more than one level. They're not just an answer. They really go deeper than that when you're being asked the right questions. And so it sounds like your coach had the right questions.
She did. And she asked me the right question and then helped me to really have the confidence to hear the answer and to not shy away from what I really wanted. Because I was really nervous and scared because my husband stayed home full time, has always stayed home full time with our young daughters. And he did all the grocery shopping, the cooking, the cleaning, and the Girl Scouts and all of that. And so, for me to all of a sudden be working from home and not having the security and stability of that paycheck was really scary. But I launched my business and jumped in. And what's interesting, Debbie, is after a couple of years, I've been coaching now for 15, 20 years, I started to notice these themes on what gets in the way of people really getting to that next level. And we started researching, we had flip charts all over and did case studies. I've coached thousands of hours, 10,000 hours, I think, probably. And we developed this model, Thoughtfully Fit, that highlights, and it's got 6 practices that align with the 6 obstacles, the hurdles that get in the way of people being high performing. And that officially came to life on a Saturday in March, a couple of years ago. And 5 days later, my life just fell apart in the most extreme way when I got a call from my neighbor asking me what was happening at my house. And I said, well, I don't know, I'm not at home. Why? And she said, Darcy, there's 50 police cars and a SWAT team and officers and guns, and they just took your husband out barefoot in handcuffs. And I said, what are you talking? What? That, Debbie, was the start of my nightmare. And I became ground zero for test driving my new Thoughtfully Fit model, because I had to hire an attorney. My husband was ultimately arrested for sexual assault of a minor that he had met online. And when he was taken away that day, he never came home. Mm. And all of a sudden, I had to figure out how to run a business, how to run a household, how to run a lawnmower, how to run a washing machine, how to be a single parent, deal with the legal system, get a divorce. It was overwhelming.
And everything turned on a dime, and I'm sure it seemed surreal.
It was surreal. It was like my worst nightmare. It wasn't even a nightmare because I had never had a nightmare that bad. And when the introduction, you talked about core confidence. What was interesting is that the core of the model of Thoughtfully Fit is to pause, think, and then act. And so it's designed off of a metaphor of being physically fit. When you're physically fit and you have a strong core, every movement's easier and you're less likely to get injured. In the same way, when you're thoughtfully fit and you're thoughtful in every interaction, you have a strong core. And I had to go back to that when I was blindsided and caught off guard, to not react emotionally, but to pause in the moment and to think. And that's where those questions came, where you said, oh, she asked you a question. And the think is all about asking those powerful questions so you can create new awareness and then acting in an intentional and thoughtful way.
Well, and it's interesting because especially now, I'm sure there's people who may be watching this, who their life has turned on a dime. As a result of current circumstances, something has shifted in their life. They've possibly lost someone, they've lost a job, their company closed, everything has been turned on its head, and they've got to figure their way forward without having the benefit of, okay, well, this worked in the past, I can use it in the future, just not having those sort of resources. So appropriate.
Absolutely. There are so many people right now, and what's so unique about this is it's unprecedented, and nobody knows what's going to happen and where we're going next. And so at the core, you always come back to control and choices. You always come back, and that's what makes us unique as a human species, that we can identify, what do I control? When everything feels out of control, getting really clear at the core, what do I have control over here? And then what are my choices? And it's usually, a lot of times when we are in a crisis, we feel like it's black and white, and there's only 2 options, there's 2 choices, and oftentimes they're both bad. At your core, it's about being able to pause in the moment and think, okay, what are the other choices? What's possible here? What do I need? And then being able to act from that place of, what do I control, instead of being a victim or giving away your power.
So is it about increasing choice or increasing options, getting yourself out of that very limited mindset of, this is what I've been dealt,
yes,
and moving outward to, what can I do about it? How can
Absolutely.
I increase my options? How can I increase the choices that I get to make, and hopefully find one that works more in favor of me?
Exactly. And you're right on. And the secret is that there's always choices. So it's not even, it is increasing them, but it's really increasing your awareness of them, because there's always choices. It's being able to, in that moment, pause and think, what are the choices? What is possible? Okay, if I went to the extreme, if I wasn't upset, there's so many different ways to go. So when my husband was arrested, I felt like I had no choices. All of a sudden, his mugshot was all over the TV, the nightly news. I'd wake up and go up to the end of the driveway. I still get a newspaper and see his mugshot there. I felt like I had no choices. My life was over. And for a while there, I crawled into a hole and felt like there weren't any. And
Which
then
I think is a
realized,
natural reaction, and it's part of the process.
yes,
There's a grieving, I would say. Luckily I've not been through anything like that. I've been through different types of grieving processes, but similar to what happened to you or losing your job. I mean, there is a process that you go through. So, it's okay to crawl in that hole, but you just don't want to stay there. So using
yes.
this to help work yourself out of that.
Absolutely. And that you make such a good point, Debbie, because there is a choice where you can say, I'm going to crawl in this hole. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to feel the emotions. I sent my children to my sisters in another state 5 hours away to protect them. That was a choice. It was hard. It was a hard choice. But I started to realize, okay, I do still have choices. And I've had a lot of clients who have gotten laid off, who have gotten a cancer diagnosis, who have had a global pandemic, and it can feel like you're out of control or you have no control. And at the core, you always have the ability to make those choices. And as you said, to increase your awareness that there are other choices.
So can you give me an example, maybe a client that you've worked with, of course, not using any names, change the name to protect the innocent, but how you use this core fundamental to thoughtfully fit, the pause, the think, the act, what
Yes.
that looked like in someone's perhaps career.
Yes, absolutely. So there's little places and big places that you can use this. Okay. So I always say, don't start with your mother-in-law. Start when you're at line in Costco and somebody cuts you off or takes the last, case of toilet paper, and you just want to flip them off. You want to engage, you want to react in that moment, to pause and think, okay, is this a fight that I want to have right now, or could I just breathe and say, oh, go ahead and let it go, and act from that place thoughtfully. So for a client and for some of your fans who are working to get to that next level of their career, it may be recognizing when you're in the board meeting or in a staff meeting and somebody blindsides you and catches you off guard and they blame you for something, instead of having your autopilot default reaction, whatever that is. For some of us,
rise to challenge. You want to.
Yes. Some people will fight back. Some people will cry. Some people will stonewall, whatever that is. In the moment, pause and take a breath and think. And it can be this quick. How do I want to show up? Okay, what's happening right now? How can I neutralize this? What do I need to stay calm and engaged instead of shutting down and going to my autopilot, shutting down or fighting back? Okay, what I need to do right now is take a deep breath, and I need to acknowledge that they said something that hurt or that I didn't agree with, and that's okay. Positive conflict is okay. So in the moment, breathing and thinking and then acting, saying, so it sounds like you've got a different opinion than I do, and I'd love to hear what that is. Instead of, well, that's not right, or why do you think that? And that can just, in that moment, shift the whole conversation.
Yeah, one of the things that when I work with clients, we do a lot of release work around negative emotions and other obstacles that we create in order to get to a place where you're more flat, more calm. So in any situation, like similar to what you described, when you can respond or come from a place of logic versus emotion, you're all the better for it. Because as soon as you crawl up into that emotion and you respond from that place, they've gotten a reaction from you, and essentially, they've won, or at least have gained some ground.
Yes, exactly. And so when you can stay in that place of always engaging your core, what do I control? What are my choices? And the best way to do that, those 3 simple steps, and then wash, rinse, repeat. So you pause, you think, ask yourself those thoughtful questions, and then act. Like you said, don't react, act thoughtfully, intentionally, and then pause again and say, how did that go? Did I get the result that I wanted, right? In the think, and then you can act again and pivot if you need to from there.
Okay, so calibrating on the result that you got, calibrating on that feedback.
Beautifully said.
Okay, all right, great. And in essence, this can be used a lot for enforcing your boundaries too. So the response to a situation may be a little different than enforcing your boundaries, but there may be instances where somebody has challenged you in a way, disrespected you in a way, hijacked your idea. I hear that a lot from my clients. People speaking over you, not letting you talk. So you could use this process in enforcing those boundaries as well.
100%.
And describe how that might happen.
Yes, it's interesting. Brene Brown talks about the most compassionate people are the most boundaried. And I never really knew what that meant. Like, what does compassion have to do with boundaries? And throughout this crisis in my life and working with clients, I've figured out that when you set a healthy boundary and you communicate that and you hold that, you have more compassion, as opposed to when you don't, and then you overreact and you are angry and you yell, and because you didn't set that boundary calmly and compassionately up front and say, well, actually, that's not going to be an option. This is what my boundaries. And what's interesting also to note, that it took me a while to figure out, is that boundaries aren't for other people. It's not like, so for instance, it's what you will do. So I had a client I was working with, and she said, Darcy, I set a boundary that I start my meetings on time and everybody has to be on time. Mm-hmm. And that first meeting, we'll say Sue came 10 minutes late. And I blew up at her and I was so mad. She disrespected the boundary I set. And so as we worked through that, what she realized was that you can't set a boundary for another person. And so what she did is said, my boundary is that I start meetings on time. And when you come late, I'm not going to go back and reiterate what we just covered. So she was getting really angry and there was no compassion because Sue come in late. She'd be like, okay, here's what we just covered to get you up to speed. And now she had an edge with her right on her. As opposed to saying, I start meetings on time and I'm not going to go back and recap and review. And then when somebody came in late, she just was able to stay compassionate and keep running the meeting instead of getting angry.
And assertive. It's a very assertive behavior. Yes. When you can stand in you being right, but also allowing others to be right as well. I described boundaries as kind of putting a fence around your yard. Once you have a fence, you get to decide who comes in and who stays out. You get to decide who has permission to come in whenever they want, whatever the case may be. But, the fence is to put a parameter around you and what's acceptable to you.
That's great. And the metaphor we often use is, like a soccer game or a football game. It's fun to watch because there's very clear boundaries. What's in bounds and what's out of bounds. And if you know what's in bounds and out of bounds and everybody else knows, you have a fun game.
Yeah.
Right? If you ever go watch a backyard game where they're playing in the field and there's no boundaries, they're yelling, that was out of bounds. And they're yelling and there's...
Right? And there's a squabble.
Yes, there's a squabble.
Well, this is terrific. I love the Thoughtfully Fit model and that this is the center of it. And I look forward to learning more about the Thoughtfully Fit model. And Darcy, what is one piece of advice that you would leave with the people who may be watching this about, creating a thoughtfully fit mindset or embracing the pause, think, act?
Debbie, the one thing I'll say is that if you are in a place right now where your life is not where you want it to be, where there's conflict or crisis and you're feeling out of control or that there aren't choices, just know it's okay and there is hope. It will get better. I thought my life was over when my husband was arrested. I have a closer relationship with my daughters than I ever could have imagined. I take them to go visit him in prison. We have forgiveness. My business didn't go bankrupt. I'm thriving. So if there's one message I want to say is it's a message of hope, like stay with it. And I also wanted to let you know that if your listeners want to learn more, I created a 3-video series on thoughtfullyfit.com that they can go to that talks about how this model helped me get through this crisis.
Oh, beautiful. So thoughtfullyfit.com. And how can they find more about you?
My website is darcyluoma.com. And I've got, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of those, LinkedIn. And I would love to connect and hear stories successes, fabulous failures, anything that somebody's going through, you'll get through it.
Oh, Darcy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here today. And if anybody has any questions, you can leave them below in the comments. We'll be sure to get you an answer. I am Debbie Peterson of Getting to Clarity, and I help women and emerging leaders get to the next level in their career by creating a roadmap to get there and the tools to achieve it. So until the next time, here is wishing you the clarity you deserve. Have a really great day, and bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.